How are you, sir?
I'm fine. How are you today, man?
Very well, very well. You know, I was going to ask you as well, how are you feeling? How's life been treating you?
Well, I have to say, life is like a diving board. In order to go off the diving board, it has to go down in order to propel you up. So I think a lot of times what you think may be a down moment or down transition, just keep your seatbelt handy because it's going to spring you up, So I was just invited to a meeting this morning, and just so many musical geniuses were there, with Stuart Copeland and Diane Warren. I don't know where to start. I mean, Armand Sabaleko was there. I mean, everybody was there. Jerry Jamat, just true geniuses in the business that have shaped our sonic lives. And I was just honored to be a part of the whole thing. And
well deserved, though. Well deserved. I've been listening to your man, and this is your stuff. The Louis Metoyer band. Sorry, that you sound fantastic. You're like seriously, you're like, the reincarnation of Jimi Hendrix.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think a lot of us guitarists, we favorite tracks that we would listen to, but I would listen to everything back to back. And I think it just, I have an older brother, and he turned me on to Hendrix. It was the Band of Gypsies record that I heard that really, that live performance was something that was very captivating. And when I heard that, it was more than sonic, but it captured my soul. I can still remember running downstairs saying, "What is that, man? What is that? What's that sound?" And he goes, "Oh, that's Jimi Hendrix." And I was like, wow. And at the time, unfortunately, my mother was sick with cancer. She passed away a couple years after that. This was in the early 70s, but she was worried because of the press. Thank you. But the press was always saying, "Oh, Hendrix," and they wanted to always talk about the drugs more so than the music. And I have to be honest, I've been very close. I guess I had been, everyone has a radio, but depending on what frequency you tune to, I realized that God had been sending me all these messages. I didn't realize how much that Hendrix was in touch with God as well. Apparently Purple Haze its working title was Jesus Saves. Wow. So I learned different things every day. So if you heard a millimeter of Hendrix's happiness and vibrations in there, I'm honored, because there's so many, and again, I'm not just excited about guitar. It could be Miles Davis, the way he approaches a solo. It could be Stanley Clarke. Just so many musicians that Hendrix certainly made you want to put on some bell bottoms and get with the groove. But sonically and visually and just everything, it was a major part. But yeah, I don't really fool around with the tunes anymore, but it was definitely part of this nutritious breakfast. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. But which I mentioned that as well, because obviously we're in the UK, people know Hendrix. He's arguably the greatest guitar player that ever was.
Yes.
So that's one of the things. It's nice to kind of center that, people kind of get an idea of what your style of guitaring is and how great a guitar player you are, because realistically, you are a fantastic guitar player.
Thank you.
But before we go on, I wanted to say first and foremost, a big thanks to Ettore, because without Ettore and Terry Cedar, we won't be having this conversation now. So because of those guys that we're talking, so it's an absolute pleasure. I feel kind of seriously humbled to be here talking to you on clusterview.com. This is actually my official first Zoom interview.
Oh, beautiful. Well,
so
I'm honored.
So I'm trying to make sense of all of this stuff. But I've done talks on this stuff, but I've not actually interviewed anyone. I've done an interview, but it's not an interview that's actually been put out yet. So this is the first official interview that we'll be putting out, Clusterview. So again, that's a fantastic thing in itself.
I'm truly honored, and yes, of course, thank you, Terry and Ettore, for making this possible. Two beautiful brothers.
Yeah, they're lovely people, absolutely beautiful people in that regard. But also I want to say as well, because obviously, bringing everyone back to who you are and getting people to kind of just get a better idea of you. the Four Non Blondes. People know the Four Non Blondes. Okay.
Yes.
Then there was that track "What's Up," which I want to ask you again. Why was that even before I said that? Why was that song called "What's Up" and not "What's Going On"? Because it's "What's Going On." I'm like, "What's going on?" Yeah. And your incredible guitar solo coming through, that lovely riff that you play, simple but beautiful riff. It's like, why did they call it "What's Up"? Who was responsible for that?
Well, I wasn't one of the writers. That Four Non Blondes record, it was really quite a lot of things that were going on at the same time. I look at life like a pinball machine. As long as the ball is still on the table, everything's good. As long as the ball doesn't drop, boom, keep moving. So I got a phone call to work with them, actually, to come by to try a couple tracks to see how it sounded. David Tickle was the producer, but his assistant, Laurent Hardy, had my phone number, and they had gone through 6 or 7 other guitarists, and they were trying, and this was a lot, at the time, a lot of guys were using their racks and all these other kind of guitar ways to contort their sounds and be futuristic with stuff, but I immediately got where Four Non Blondes was coming from. And so we tracked 2 songs that first day I was with them. And it was just a very happy family. The songs were all written. And when I came in, it was just...
is that a better process for you to have the songs written, or do you like to be part of the writing process?
Good question. I have contributed things to other songs, but people get amnesia when it comes time for sharing writing credits. So that's why a lot of times I'm like, how many witnesses in this room here? So so it's kind of funny. It's a very tricky sword to walk on, because I mean, obviously you want to work with people, and I think being a sideman, as I had a career of, you want to nurture and make sure that someone else attains the vision that they're hearing and seeing. And sometimes you put yourself in the back seat and think in an afterthought, well, maybe there's going to be some honesty here or something like that. But I've been left out of credits on things before. I've been left out of this and that and the other thing, bunched into credits, like with the guy who was bringing coffee to the studio and whatever. I mean, they don't even list who the musicians were on the record. You just end up being in a pile of stuff. Wow. So I really, I don't know if I want to say shameful, but I think it's naive of the managers and the producers and whatnot, because that's a sideman or a session man's calling card. If the song is popular, like Hilary Duff, I recorded with her, and a couple of these songs were very popular for her at the time because there was some kind of thing going on with Lindsay Lohan, and so they were using this song to get back at each other, but no one knew it was me on the guitar, and the guy in the video, of course, was white guy with sunglasses. I mean, nobody knew, they think, oh, that must be the guy that played it, so so a lot of times, and I'm not the only guy. I mean, I'm sure there's 11 billion other players that this has happened to, but it's like, oh goodness, not again, so those things happen.
That's a bit unfair, but look, okay, we'll move on from that then, because obviously we're going to talk about this stuff more later on. But how would you classify your music? Like, the music you tend to do, how would you classify it?
Well, I'm in the process of recording a whole bunch of new stuff. You saw some sneak peeks that I've only allowed out because, believe it or not, when you play here in LA, of course, somebody stands like 2 feet in front of you with their arms, you must be a guitarist, because the guy's just sitting there in front of you, giving you no vibe, but he's taking notes. It's like, why don't you let someone who likes to dance get closer? Because I think there may be more sincerity there. But the next thing you know, a lick you're doing or the way you play something, someone else is doing it, and they're acting like they just woke up playing that one day. So I feel like a poker player. You got to keep the cards close to your vest, when you're playing out or anything. So to be honest with you, Mark Anthony, I think I'm just finally getting ready to show why I exist. So there's 30 tunes I'm working on right now, and I just want it to be a bunch of songs that are ready so that I can just keep releasing while I'm working on all this other new stuff. So I would say, even though I'm a rock and roller, like when I started out, I guess the biggest thing that I started out with was that group New Edition, if you remember them.
Yeah.
But I was in spandex like all the other rock and rollers in the 80s because I really wanted to be doing rock and roll. But this was, you know, so who, is this guy at the right gig? Look at what this guy's wearing.
How did you guys fit into that spandex anyway?
That was a few bagels ago, man. It's okay. But yeah, some of that stuff looked pretty spray painted on, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would say, yeah, I mean, I went to music school. That was the other thing. And so you're able to experiment with the different styles of music. But I've always loved to experiment with sounds and textures and to push the limits, you know. So sometimes it's even putting an R&B lick in a rock song, but if you put the proper tone on it, now it's not such an R&B lick, and it's like something more percussive that may actually go with, you know, what the ensemble's playing. So it's in the wrist. A lot of rockers are downstroke, you know, R&B guys are back and forth, you know. So if you keep the hummingbird going.
I'll keep that in mind now. I'll keep that in mind when I play guitar. Now I know you've given me some. Thank you for that little tip.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to keep the hummingbird going, you know. No matter what style it is, you know. So you have to, think outside the box, because if you practice outside the box, those things will be in your subconscious for when it is time to execute something. And before you know it, you just happen to be the closest guy to the guitar. I mean, it just takes you over to where an idea comes, and you just happen to be the guy, the closest one to the strings, you know. So.
But why didn't you choose hip hop? Why didn't you choose R&B? I mean, you seem to be more rock and roll. I mean, I have that affinity with you. I feel your music, I feel your vibe, and it's to me, it's rock and roll, it's rock pop. That's kind of where my heart is in music. When I create stuff, I tend to do a lot more around the rock stuff and whatever. So why didn't you go for hip hop? What was the draw?
Well, I think tempo has a lot to do with things for me. I like a faster tempo. So you can jump off the drum riser, you know. I mean, you can run around and act like a fool. Hip hop usually ends up being a little slower. You know, it's like the blues. I'm too happy for the blues. I'm not a blues guy. You know, I want to work up a sweat. I want to work up a sweat, man. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get somewhere.
I get you. Yeah, exactly. And people say a lot of the time it's the drugs they're on, isn't it? The different type of drug they're on. Well, no, seriously, it will basically determine what kind of music they play. Or the music.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a different category. But yeah, I mean, you know, when I was working with Terrence Trent D'Arby, I mean, I'd down a cup of coffee before I went on stage. You know, I'd get that caffeine cooking, man. I mean, clearly, you got thousands of people in front of you, you know, football stadiums or whatever. But still, if you can jumpstart your, you know, the motor before you get up on stage, that's even, you know. Of course, you walk out like this, but you know, should have tried the decaf.
Well, it makes sense. I get it now. It makes perfect sense. But look, it's okay, because you're talking about Terrence Trent D'Arby, and now we're starting to see that you've had this wonderful journey doing with some great names, because he was a fantastic, and Lenny Kravitz, incredible artist. But what's been the most exciting part of your musical journey?
Well, you know, working with Terrence, he was a very giving performer, very giving artist. He never acted like, okay, we're going to keep you tucked away in the corner. He wanted everyone to dress flashy. That last band that we had, he wanted everyone to shine. And I'm so grateful for his tutelage and his honesty. And we were very, very close with sharing ideas on how to record things, how to approach things. I really loved working with Terrence because he is from R&B to rock to jazz. So he forces you to dig inside and be experimental with things, especially in the studio. We probably recorded 40, 50 tunes together. You know, so some of them are still trickling out. That's
a lot of work. I know, because obviously I know how hard it is to get through 20 tunes when you're working with somebody, other musician. It's a lot of work. Yeah. So you must have known him for a long time.
Yeah, we worked together for 10 years, which, you know, for Hollywood, that's a lifetime, you know. But yeah, it's like we were raised in the same house, but we hadn't run into each other till we finally met, you know.
Yeah.
And that was a whole different thing, because I was working, well, like I said, that's part of the pinball machine. I was working, David Tickle, the Four Non Blonde producer, had me work with Patty Scialfa, who's Bruce Springsteen's wife, and she had written some wonderful songs. And so I was honored to work with her. And so she invited me to come to live with them for a while, because it was easier to do the Today Show and other interviews and whatnot on the radio back if I moved back to New York. So, but while I was back there is when, when I met Terrence and his band, because John Bon Jovi came over for dinner and invited me to this show at Madison Square Garden. It was a radio station that was having like 10 or 12 different bands. And so I went there early to see some of the other bands, and Terrence was one of the bands that was playing. And
John Bon Jovi as well. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I didn't perform with John. He came over for dinner at Bruce's, and he said, "Oh, why don't you come down to the Garden this Saturday, because we're playing there, and there's going to be a bunch of bands." I said, "Oh, thanks, dude." So if he hadn't invited me down there, I wouldn't have run into Terrence and his troupe, because I knew the drummer, Steve Thayard, who was a very dear friend from a band I used to play with in 82 or 83. And he told me, he said, "Hey man, we're going to need somebody to go to Europe in a couple of months." And so, yeah, I auditioned on a Friday and I was on a plane on Sunday. You know, it was very interesting with the Terrence thing, but yeah, so those things, they kind of ricochet off each other. It's timing, you know, as well.
But that was one of your best experiences working with Terrence and Darby, or as we know him, Sananda Maitreya. Is it Sananda Maitreya?
Yeah, Sananda Maitreya.
So not to confuse people, Sananda Maitreya and everything else. Yes. So yeah, but again, fantastic. Yeah, so obviously, you know, I saw one of your recent, not recent, it wasn't recent, it was a long time ago, but it was the Children of the Revolution, that track you did with Roachford and Darby or Sananda Maitreya. That was unbelievable.
Oh, wasn't that special?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Roachford.
Track, you know, Children of the Revolution, unbelievable.
Yeah, that was for that French TV show Taratata.
Okay.
And they would always pair up these amazing groups to perform together. And it was like a mini arena in there, just the energy and the people interviewing and whatnot. We were on that show, I think, 3 or 4 times. One time Stevie Wonder was on, and you never knew who you were going to be on with. But working with Roachford, just a wonderful guy.
Yeah, and, that was magical. That track. I mean, I didn't want it to end, and I wanted you guys to do that chorus again. Children of the Revolution. I mean, I love that tune.
And the song's great. Yeah. So when you got 2 great guys singing it,
please do the chorus again at the end. You know, I was like, please. But anyway, it was great. Fantastic.
You may have to make a super edit there and make it
number. That's what I'll do. I'm going to edit and put it on the end so I can just have it on loop.
Yeah. Have a ringtone.
Definitely. So another question for you. I love nothing more than to encourage people to play guitar. So can you recommend, a guitar? Like, for example, I know you play Gibsons. I've seen in most of your videos, you got a Gibson. You're like a big Gibson fan.
Well, the Gibson thing's kind of funny. I was a Strat man forever. You know, Fender, Strat. I was all about the Strat. And I was approached by... well, actually, when I was in music school, a lot of Gibson players were there, and they say, "Oh man, you'd have a great time on a Gibson." I was like, you know, I saw the hollow body stuff. I was like, that's not me. You know, I'm a rock and roller, dude. What are you talking about? So as it turned out, some years later, I ended up with an endorsement with Gibson, and that particular Les Paul that you see, it has some special electronics in there by a company called Graphtech. That can give you it gives you an acoustic sound, because there's little microphones in the bridge that give you this acoustic sound. So if you turn down the magnetic standard pickups, it sounds like an acoustic guitar. So there's a blending of these 2 tones.
Little tricks, eh?
Well, you know, it's ear candy. You know what I mean? Just little things to throw you to make it different than the other guitar. You know, so I truly started. I was a Fender man for forever. For decades, and then so now I'm enjoying the Les Paul world. I You know, it's funny. I think people gravitate to things that they have seen their heroes playing or whatever their favorite song may have been demonstrated on. But I always think it's great to think of a song you love and something easy. I always think the Beatles songs are always a great place to start because you get instant gratification. You know, you got 3 or 4 chords and you feel like you just, you know, won the lottery. You know, it's like, hey, I'm playing a Beatles song here, you know. So, but I think it's always great to start out something so you can put in your backpack and say, yes, I achieved this one. Let me move on to the next song. Let me move on to the next song. Because if you stack a huge thing, I remember one student when I used to teach, he wanted to learn an AC/DC solo. And I said, well, I'd love to teach you that, but don't you want to know why he's playing that note on that chord? He said, oh, no, I just want to learn the solo. And then as I'm teaching him the solo, he lacked the technique to do some of these bends and things. So you have to be patient to get your finger strength up to the task as well, because you don't want, you know, why disappoint yourself, you know? So
is it about gaining speed first, getting the speed?
You know, the
speed.
Before you do all
the licks and stuff, it's about the speed. Because obviously, someone here, the kids coming in, they want to know, they want something from you. They want to, when they watch this video, they want to go away and say, okay, I learned that from Louis Metoyer. You know, he told us this is what you're supposed to do. You know, come on, he says, this is a freebie. We want some freebies.
Well, here's the deal. Speed comes with confidence. So if you take the time to learn it so slow, it's like watching a snail. Our brains are so fast, we can absorb every nanosecond of how that lick goes, how that scale goes, so that it's automatic when it's time to execute. So there's no one to impress. Play it as slow as you possibly can, and you'll learn it much faster. So that's half the joy right there, is like knowing that you started from you know.
Yeah. Brilliant. So you heard it here first, guys. You heard it here first on Cluster View.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, one thing obviously I will have in common, obviously, with you is, for me, it's like I when I write songs to deal with my mood, my emotions, and things like that. What do? Do you write songs, or do you play guitar to channel your emotions?
Great question. I didn't take myself serious as a songwriter for many years. I start out with hearing the music first, and as the song germinates, and I feel comfortable with that's the instrumental version of it, then the lyrics start to come on, like icing or sprinkles, you know. So even now, some of these songs that I'm recording now, the meaning has changed. Some of these things are reflecting the times that we're living in, but the chord structures are so dramatic and so unexpected that they keep your interest. And the melody, of course, tests our scales here. It's like my dear friend Dick Dale, who passed away a couple of years ago. He wrote that song Miserlou that was in Pulp Fiction, and that was the song that. I mean, so he was Lebanese, so the scales, we weren't used to those scales here in the United States, so that's what made that song stand out so differently. Yeah. And so you have to challenge yourself. You have to say, okay, this may not.
There, can I interrupt?
Oh, please.
What you remind me of, what you're saying there is basically the same as what we'll talk about Kurt Cobain's track. You know, Dave Grohl. I remember the track, the first track that the big track that I can't remember the name, but the big song that was it Nevermind?
Yeah, could it? Yeah, I don't know all the titles, but Teen Spirit. Yeah, I think that's Teen Spirit. I think
when it's contagious. And it starts off, and the way Dave Grohl's playing, his drums are a little bit slower. But then even with the guitar in, he's playing very, very messy. The guitar is very messy. We all know Kurt Cobain could play differently, but he's very, very messy. But that difference, it drew people to the song. Everyone was like, what's this? It was just this huge noise. And then all of a sudden it just dropped out, and it went in this nice calmness of his music. And I think so those kind of things, exactly, those little differences that you're talking about make everyone's ears prick up and go, hey, this is really unusual.
Oh heavens, yes. And the way Kurt was playing that, I mean, he was so angry. I thought he was going to come through the speaker cabinet and slap me. You know what I'm saying? He was like, "What are you mad about, man?"
They were like, "Why is he angry?"
Yeah.
You know, he's like, he's living a great life in America. What's wrong with this kid?
Yeah, what could be wrong, man? No, but they inspired so many, other players, and just songwriting took a left turn then. I mean, so what a time for him to make his statement. I think he had so many more things to say, and I remembered hearing the rumors about Dave Grohl playing guitar in a sound check, so I mean, it wasn't after Kurt had passed that he picked up the guitar. I was hearing these rumors. Yeah, it's like, hey, put those where those sticks go, buddy? You're creeping into this, you're trying to put somebody out of work. What you doing over here? But I'm happy for all of those guys, I really am, truly.
Brilliant. So what projects are you currently working on now? Because I said I've looked at your band, I've watched it on YouTube, and I've listened to some of your music. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I watched some of your gigs.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing more and learning more about you and everything else. But what are you actually working on? Is the band going to come? Is you bringing the band back, or is it what's happening with the band at the moment?
Well, we're still dealing with the COVID restrictions.
Of course.
And so I've been putting my studio just finally elected over the years. And I'm like, oh, that'll work out when? Oh, this will be perfect when? Well, now is when. Are talking to each other technically. Technically, everything is working out. So, we're just cutting the basic tracks right now. So it's going to be very exciting.
Is it going to be albums? Are you going to release an album? What's it going to be, an EP? How's it going to go?
I'm sure there'll probably be. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm not sure what's going to happen. It may just be a bunch of singles. I mean, the record industry has changed so much.
Exactly, and that's why I thought it was interesting to have this conversation, because things have changed, and it's like, it's kind of one could be a little bit nervous about, but at the same time, it means that the public want more music. So you're talking about you've got a lot of songs, the public want a lot more music. I'm watching acts, especially on Cluster View, releasing different tracks a week. They're just putting stuff out there, and they're getting the reaction, and it's building slowly, because obviously the plan, I imagine, is when it comes to the concerts, they've got a lot of music, they're ready to do those big shows.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm doing. So I'm not trying to think too far ahead. I'm just working on the creations and making sure what's being sent to me is that I'm putting everything that I'm hearing in this song. And I know God is sending me this music. I can't take credit for any of it. I just happen to be holding the guitar, so I'm just making sure that's to perfection. And then whatever else to happen is what will happen.
Okay, all right, brilliant. That sounds good. Okay, before we go, I just want to ask, because obviously I can't let you go without asking about, a little bit about the Meghan Markle situation. We have an issue in England with obviously Meghan Markle, having to leave and go to America and everything else, and the people saying the reasons behind it is because of racism in the UK. I just want to ask you, because obviously there's racism in America as well, but I just want to ask you, did you ever experience racism in the industry as a musician? In America? Oh,
certainly. Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, this even goes back to the 70s. So I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, originally, little dot in the middle of the country. But I think it confuses people because there's so much packaging and labeling. I mean, I'm sitting here with these dreads, and people, first thing they think is, oh, you play reggae. Don't let the sights throw you off, because I rocker with long hair. I wanted long hair, so there you go. Yeah, it just turned out being dreads. But yes, I mean, I remember going to some auditions actually in the early 80s for rock bands. I was giving rock guitar lessons, but some of these same bands, they didn't need a black guitarist playing on Sunset Strip, and when I got the call for New Edition, we were playing, stadiums, the big arenas, Madison Square Garden, the Superdome, all these other things that those guys on the Strip wanted to play, but they were just playing in LA. I remember going to this audition, and I walked in, and the woman was sitting at the desk at the rehearsal studio, and she said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Oh, sure, I'm here. I'm the 4 o'clock, whatever time it was." And she said, "Oh, that's strange." She says, "What's your name?" And I told her my name, and my name was there. And she goes, did you call?" And I said, "Yeah, that was me on the phone." She goes, "Well, that's strange. You didn't sound black on the phone."
Gosh.
So I was like, okay, what's the difference? So I sat down, and she goes, "You know what? I think they're going to end up going with the guy that's in there right now."
Oh my gosh.
And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, why am I going to try and fight whatever they're tripping on?" So again, excuse me, I'm sorry that my allergies are messing with me. I
get allergies too. I'm now on Centrazine, so I know what you're going.
Oh goodness. Yeah, and it's like 80 something outside it. Yeah, wow. It's like 80 something outside today. So all these flowers and everything are blooming because they think it's summertime.
We love flowers, but we love looking at them, but we don't want to get them up on nostrils.
Yeah, I like a picture better, But yeah, I mean, there's been, there were tricks back in the early 80s with black musicians in the studio where a lot of guys who were improvising on these great hits of the 70s weren't reading charts and stuff. So there were a lot of times where guys would come to sessions and they'd put a chart there, and some guys would act like they could read it, so they'd get through the session. But other times people were trying to use that as a way to try and thin the herd, so to say, in the studio.
Wow. And, I get it. Yeah. Oh, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, it's, but you know what, at the end of the day, is that the place you really needed to be? That could have been a nice invitation, because someone's going to rip off your sound, someone's going to rip off your lick, somebody's going to rip off something else. So you bottom feeders, go ahead and feed off of yourselves.
I get it.
I look at that as I got out of there cheap. I'm not chasing. I mean, there's other artists that have taken licks that I've taken and written songs off those licks, and then when they're doing an interview, people are saying, "Where did you get the idea for that song?" And now they've got to do a shuffle that makes absolutely no sense at all. So, I'm patient. The truth will come out, because some of those songs are the ones I'm recording for real now. So
I get it, and I understand it. And obviously, the reason why I mentioned that for me, because obviously the issue with Meghan Markle is almost as if she's not experienced racism. Obviously, racism is prevalent in America as well. So I think maybe she was probably surprised to find it in the UK. One of those things. I imagine it would have been a bit of a shock to her to be in a royal family and have that situation happen to her. But then you're talking about stuff that, again, it's still shocking. America, the racism in America, as you're describing it, is very shocking. It's very, very blatant.
Well, it's blatant now, but then there's folks that try and practice their racism. So they think they're being sneaky or tricky. But I've seen it. I've seen every little card you could pull off the bottom of the deck. I've seen it all. I was thrown in a paddy wagon when I was 4 during the civil rights demonstrations. So my parents were civil rights activists, and so I don't even know anyone else that's been in a paddy wagon besides my parents and my sister. So it's like, what? Such an archaic display for people just saying, "Hey, aren't those our rights?" So all of these things, unfortunately, a lot of people think they're being creative with their racism, but it's so obvious. And I call people out on it, because what do I have to lose to say, "Hey, look, no, I see what you're doing. I'm going to call you out on it, and let's see if you're still going to keep this ruse going, because I'm just going to stay toe to toe with you on it." Fire me because I'm not qualified, but don't qualify. Don't fire me because you don't like my skin color or whatever. I mean, and at the end of the day, when it reflects on music, and I just think you don't know what race a person is, or if they wore jeans or sandals in the session. Is the music good? I mean, I think it comes back to how much the music penetrates, and what's the positivity of it, and where it's going. Does it stir up pleasantries? So I've always worked with the light. I've always worked with the bright side of And those folks that hopefully they'll overcome their confusion. I don't see how the human race is going to survive if we're doing all this. But if you need a kidney, I'll use that other race's kidney now. All of a sudden we're friends if I can give you a spare part, So we have to think deeper than that.
No, absolutely. But for me, it's quite shocking to hear, because obviously when you think about, Louis Metoyer, he's played on so many things, you played so many great people, he's got billion, your riffs are, billion views on YouTube, Fun on Blondes, everything else, the accolade, having these stories. We don't want to hear you have these stories. We want you to tell us the world's, it's the most beautiful place and nothing bad happens, and you just got to become a great guitar player and everything just, everything falls into place. So it's a bit of a shock, but at the same time, the resilience you have is amazing. And it's like, can music, we all hope that music will one day heal the world, wouldn't it? That's what we say. Love, love can heal the world. Music's a wonderful vehicle for love.
Yes.
So we have to have hope.
Oh, completely. And there's two kinds of music. There's good music and there's bad music. Unfortunately,
and there's dark music and there's light music.
Exactly. So it's a vehicle that's been used by different sources and forces, if I can say that. So I like to work with the source that's light, love, positivity, and happiness. So I know there's options. I have been approached by other darker bands, so to say, but I know, and the pay, the bribes would have been really nice, but I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, because obviously your spirit doesn't work with your spirit. I get it. I understand. And I get the same thing with my music. I'd rather not make music at all, and I'd rather be involved in a more community way, working with people in a positive way. If I'm going to make music that's not, if the music industry only wants that, I'd rather not be part of the industry in that regard.
Right.
That makes sense to me.
Yep.
But Louis, an absolute pleasure. And if you want to say something else, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I want us to go on for too long, because I want the world to kind of just be immersed in what we've said. Sometimes things go. I think with Zoom, people talk a lot, and what happens, you lose the vibrance of what the interview is about. And I just want to keep us engaged in that. Does that make sense?
Well, certainly, yes. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and share some of these experiences. I hope we can get together again as this music, as everything ferments, But I hope I have to do some concerts there in the UK, so that we got to hang out face to face now.
But you know what? I might come to America, and I'm not saying that like it's a throwaway comment. I was going to America a hell of a lot before. I'm not an anti-Trump fan, but at the end of the day, before Trump got into power and Brexit, I was going to America pretty much every other year. So I want to go back to that kind of. I want to go back to that kind of habit. So if I do, definitely want to come check you out as well.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Yeah, and I think after COVID has done its deed, I think we're going to be a better planet. I think the awakening of everyone is going to reach further than we could possibly imagine.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. And I think the fact that we're talking, the connection like this, the more we're able to connect. I know Zoom's like it's great and weird technology. I'm getting used to it. It's weird sitting here and like obviously. Having to sit in this. I want to jump up and down, but I can't. I've got to stay in this little frame. So I get it, but eventually people will get used to it, and we'll have cameras that will follow us around. And it'll be a little bit more easier. So with that, it'll be a wonderful experience. Seriously, I'm very honoured. I'm honoured to be here having this conversation with you. I feel blessed. Okay, so thank you so much for agreeing to this interview, and to Ettore and Terry Cedar, thank you for making this possible.
Well, thank you again, and for their dedication to making sure that we got together, Mark Anthony. So this is only the beginning. So there we go. See, COVID brought us together already. So there we go. See, it's already working.
Fantastic, my buddy, brother. God bless you.
All right, God bless.
Thanks
Take
so much.
good care. All righty, thank you again.